Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Organic Matters, the podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. We're here today with Padraig Dunleavy. Padraig, thank you very much for joining us. So tell us, first of all, where are you based and what kind of farming are you doing?
So thanks, Hannah. Thanks to yourself and to Irish Organics Association for having the podcast and having all these podcasts, which I'm finding to be a very useful educational and information tool in our farming system. So yeah, where are we? We're based between Tuam and Ballinrobe in North County Galway. I'm literally looking into Mayo. Some of my Maiden walls are the county boundary. My Twitter claim to fame is that I'm probably the highest rainfall tillage farmer in Europe organically. So I don't know, someone else is probably in a higher rainfall area. We're about 1.2 meters of rain here every year. Our farming system is whaling to beef and yearling to beef. Beef was predominantly the biggest enterprise on the farm up until maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We were finishing beef year round, and then we went more down the tillage route to diversify. We also finish maybe 100 or 150 store lambs every winter through the spring on cover crops that are in rotation with the tillage operation. So yeah, I buy in the marts, and I buy a lot on farms as well off other farmers. I enjoy that part of it, going visiting other farmers and buying their livestock and finishing them then maybe 18 months or 2 years. It's a slower process in organic, as you know.
It sounds like a lot of plate spinning as well, but I hear you're very interested in soil health. So tell me a bit about that aspect of the farm.
Well, initially, you see, I came to organics as in the noughties, there was a lot of money floating around and we were all living it up, and it was all big stuff, and the farm was probably a secondary occupation. And to be honest, I was very disillusioned with farming anyway, because the system seemed to keep changing. The advice was changing every couple of years on how to be successful, and you'd no sooner be bedded into one system than the advice would change again, and you'd have to rip everything up and go again. And yeah, so towards the end of the noughties, I needed to look at income streams for the farm, and to be honest, I didn't come to organics from a philosophical point of view. I came strictly because of the grants that were available. So yeah, that's how I got here. I discovered a year or two in that, yeah, I actually like what I'm doing here, and I got to know lots of other organic farmers, and I found that they were more open-minded sort of a crew of people, and built up good friendships and relationships with 4 or 5 other fellows throughout the country. And we shared in the information, in terms of what we were trying out, what we were doing, how we were failing, how we were successful. And it was very open, and it was a new way of farming, and doing business and almost a lifestyle sort of thing. And then I started attending courses run by Sean McGloin up in Notts in the National Organic Training Service. And over the years that has developed into very much for me an interest and a love of the soil. That the soil is the foundation of the farm.
How do you tend to the soil now? Because I mean, that sounds lovely, and I think people really enjoy hearing that. But we've done a lot of podcasts now with people talking about biodynamic farming, regenerative farming. Obviously, organic farming is core to all of this. So do you have something like a bioreactor? Are you really into composting? How do you tend to your soil?
Yeah, I a little story. I met a lady one day from Malaysia, and in a work situation, and I asked her after a while, and what religion are you? I said. Oh, she said, my father brought me to all the churches and taught me to respect them all. So in the same vein, I've tasted biodynamics, I've tasted KNF, I've tasted, what Gabe Brown does. I've tasted. We've built a biodynamic reactor here in the farm. I was very honoured to have Dr. Johnson and his wife Wei Chin Su on the farm last April, and we have a bioreactor here. And I've attended courses that composting. I love composting. I love turning, excuse the language, shit into something very useful. And
I don't think you're alone.
I
think there's a bunch of organic farmers who are breathing a sigh of relief that they are not alone as well, because I have been to many farms, many organic farms have a pile of beautiful golden straw mixed through with muck, and it's one of their favorite things. They have their own digger on the farm. It might be a dilapidated yoke, but it's just there to turn the manure. So is that what you do? Do you have a system? How often do you turn it and tell us about the system?
So my system would be based on a course I attended up in Jardigan's in Offaly, which was given by a Brazilian guy called Bruce Falador. A deeply spiritual sort of a fella who seemed to glide along the ground. He didn't seem to take steps. He just floated, and he was so in touch with the ground and with compost and with microbiology, and I was very taken by his whole body language, and I watched him intently for 2 days. And you know, he talked like they talk about in biodynamics. He did everything with good intentions, and he talks about maybe 6 or 7 moves per year. He wouldn't be a fan of the machines that are being used, you know, these turning machines, because he maintains they're very aggressive. He talked about a gentle and loving sort of manipulation of, and this sounds crazy, like we're talking about cow shit here, you know, it's absolutely mad stuff. But yeah, I'm on about 6 moves a year. So the initial move is from the shed out into the yard, piled high, bring to heat. Then we bring it out into a field and put it in windrows. And I'll turn it every 4 or 5 days for the first 3 weeks, 2 weeks. And then maybe once a fortnight after that. And it is the highest form of therapy available to mankind, as far as I'm concerned.
Check the temperature? I mean, I'm sure you can tell it's steaming anyway. Or do you have anything that, you know, I've seen...
No, I've often meant to buy the thermometer. It's about €200, and I've never actually got around to it. Look, if I lift a bucket and there's steam coming, then we're at heat. As far as particularly, you know, you'll judge your temperature on the day, and like on a cold day, it's going to be steaming anyway, even at 20 degrees or 30 degrees. But in warm weathers, if you're getting steam, then you're getting up at your 60s and 70s, and you don't want to get too hot, because you'll burn all the goodness.
Explain to someone that might not be aware. Say, like, we have farmyard manure here, and I am guilty of leaving it thrown there for a couple of months and not turning it. What's the benefit of turning it?
Okay, so what I would consider raw farmyard manure is muck that's just cleaned out, put out in the yard and left there for the year. So that is in a nitrific form known as, and I'm open to correction here, because I'm not teaching, and I'm not a teacher, and I'm not qualified. But my understanding is that that's in an ammonium form called NH4. And NH4 is the god of weeds.
Okay.
Weeds love it.
Right.
Docks love it. Thistles love it. It's a very strong, raw, unbreakdownable to plants and to biology form of nitrogen. And so if I get that raw muck and I fling it out, I'm going to grow weeds. However, if I turn that muck on a regular basis, if I bring it to, if we get really technical, about 68 degrees Celsius, 3 or 4 times, I burn all the pathogens, I cook all the pathogens, weed seeds, etc., out of it. And I improve the fungal and bacterial ratio. Fungal ratios are generally way too low. So the holy grail is a 1-to-1 fungal to bacterial ratio. And that's what we're trying to get. So, you know, some of the happiest times I have had is when I'm rooting through it and the worms are there. I know I'm doing something right, you know, and that soil is the basis of the whole farm now. Yeah. And I believe, you know, I had a Chagas guy here yesterday, and it's wonderful that at long last, it's wonderful in one hand and it's scary on the other, that all the government bodies now, and everyone is now looking at organics. And I'll talk a bit on that in a minute. But he asked me, why was I so focused on soil? And I believe, Hannah, that if I get my soil right, the farm will be profitable. It has no choice but to be profitable. If my soil is in good condition, my plants will be in good condition, my animals will be in good condition, my family will be in good condition. You know, and I'd be a great believer that the best medicine and the first medicine available to all humankind is our food.
Yeah.
And, you know, good food comes from good soil. I'm starting, and this is all developed over the past 12, 14 years, you know.
And would you soil test regularly?
Not as much. I wouldn't have as much faith in the people who I believe in are less guided by soil tests than no, I was in that scheme and I have very comprehensive information, a lot more than I understand. But I'm inclined to believe that if I get my biology right in my soil,
after that, your nitrogen and your phosphorus and your pH levels will just follow.
Everything falls into balance.
Yeah.
And this farm will do what it can do, not what I will force it to do.
Mm. And how many acres would you have altogether, and what's the split then between tillage and beef?
Okay, so we farm about 150 acres.
Yeah.
100 acres, 120 acres is available all year round. There's about 30 acres in what's known as Turlough, which floods during the winter and is wonderful grazing land during the summer. But it's actually this summer, for the first time in my life, it hasn't been available. It's flooded all summer. So that has tightened us up somewhat.
Yeah.
I take bits of con acre off other tillage farmers that just wouldn't have the interest in growing their own grain. I go in there and maybe rent or grow oats under license, or grow wheat, or grow whatever I'm growing at a particular time. So even though I'm only farming 150 acres, I could have some years up to 100 acres in grain, but it wouldn't all be on my own farm.
And what kind of, you mentioned oats for flavins, what else are you doing?
So I started about 5 years ago. The beef thing had started to get very tricky. New owners had come into some of the businesses, and the relationships were somewhat different to what they used to be. And I realized, well, for me, that I needed to become a little bit independent of beef. So some of my colleagues and fellas that I was involved in had started doing a bit for flavin. So I took the field with the worst soil test in the whole farm, 10 acres in 2018, and we stuck in a crop of winter oats. And I said, if it works here, lads, it'll work anywhere. And it worked. We grew a 2-ton crop that year. It's actually one of the better crops that I've grown. And we've been increasing ever since. So I grow wheat. I go 2 winters. What I have been doing up until now is 2 winters in oats, 1 winter in wheat. Cover crop between the second oats and the first wheat in order to clean the ground. And then another rotation I've been using is 2 winters and then into rape for a winter. 2 winter oats, then rape, and then into spring oats again. So this year I've done a good bit of spring oats. Probably didn't pick the right year to do it. All my good crops are knocked, and there's green grass and all sorts of foliage coming up through them. But I got advice in the start of the year on what to do, and I thought I knew better.
And you wouldn't be the first, I'd say.
Yeah, but this is the beauty of organic farming. You know, it's not a mistake if I don't do it next year. It's a mistake if I repeat it next year. So
there you go.
It's education. And what I've found, Hannah, all through my life and all the different things I've been at, you're going to pay for your education one way or another. Yeah. You do it through college, or you do it out of your pocket, or you do it which way. So there's lessons to be learned from this year. It's particularly tricky and tough year, but, you know, we're still going to, you know, it'll be shocking if I don't cover myself.
Yeah.
You know, and look, at the primary focus of all this here is to educate the children in this house, and to show them a better way of living in terms of a farm. And like, I'm not saying ours is any better or any worse, but we're trying to tune in with nature. You know, there was a buzzard flying over the house this morning with 4 crows trying to chase him away. That's new stuff around here.
And is that important to you? Is the biodiversity
It
a lot
has to
like,
be,
yeah,
ecosystems are becoming the importance of ecosystems in the past 2 years in particular are, we're starting to realize how important they are, So for that reason, like, I don't use rat poison because I spotted an owl last winter as well. Like, and I don't want to be the one that puts out the poison that kills the rat that owl eats, and then that's another opportunity for biodiversity gone,
yeah. And
So
you mentioned family there as well. How many kids do you have?
So we myself and my wife Siobhan now has taken up the mantle of particularly she's more or less self-sufficient in food here in the house. She has 6 or 7 garden beds, and we put up a polytunnel last year, and it's been a joy, between tomatoes, cucumbers, early spuds, no-till garden, and she did the course with Jim Cronin there last year, and it's it's been really good, and we've 4 children. There's 2 lads in college out in Europe, and I have a girl going to Wrexham. We have the girl going to Wrexham now in September doing occupational therapy, and then the youngest fella is just after doing his leaving cert, and we're not sure where that's going, but he's out disking for today for cover crops. He enjoys farming too, and I'm really grateful for that. And I probably need to say out loud to him, I'm particularly grateful to my mother and father that put this place under us here, with no conditions.
And is that's something that quite important, because we talk so much about farm succession and issues around farm succession. So how's that journey been for you?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to say it was plain sailing because it wasn't, and here I am, I have an 18-year-old fella myself, and every time I make a suggestion, he counters with a different suggestion, So
That's family, yeah,
that's family, but
yeah.
it's good, and I need to be very, aware that not to repeat maybe some of the mistakes of the past, and I have a responsibility now. I can't be giving out about anyone else if I'm going repeating the same behaviors. And don't get me wrong, I am so grateful to the people that came before me, that laid this at our feet. My parents worked terribly hard. Like, my father started off here with 23 or 25 acres, and by the time he handed over to me, he gave me over 100 acres, and I feel a responsibility, and particularly to my grandfather and my grandmother and all these people, that we look after this place, and we hand it on in better shape than we got it. My dad handed it on to me in better shape than he got it off his dad. And I feel a kind of a responsibility to do that. And that's back to soil health. If I can crack this nut of soil health, and as I said to you before, I look at all churches, biodynamics, mob grazing, adapted managed grazing, and the holy grail for me is if we can ever do organic tillage in a no-till situation. And I believe, because necessity is the mother of all invention, that there will be a product, an organic product found that will allow us to replace Roundup as a eureka to if I could build biology in my soil and not turn it over. I'm plowing, and I know it's probably not the best thing for biology, turning the soil over. Like, I build a house of biology over a 3-year lay, and then I go in and I rip that house down for 5 years again, or 4 years, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So, I do believe that eventually, I don't know if it'll suit West of Ireland conditions, but, because we have so many variables here, we have a shorter day, we have less sunlight, we've more rain. Given that, I wouldn't swap with her where I live, I'm very content here. My family are reasonably content here. I at long last, at over 50 years of age, I can at long last say I love what I do. And for that, I'm very, very grateful that, someone set up a scheme that attracted me into it. And though I came to grab the money, I've stayed to maybe worship at the altar of soil health, and I can't make that point enough, that if I can get this soil thing right, with the help of hundreds and thousands of other people, be it at NOTS conferences, at BioFarm, at farm walks, YouTube, there's a huge growing body of people interested in this stuff, and probably the greatest compliment I know this American guy and he's a Buddhist, and we got talking one day and I was telling him that I was composting. He got all excited because he wanted to start a garden himself, and he came down. We stuck the fork in the compost and I turned over and there was maybe just a fork full of worms, and he just nudged me in the side with his elbow and he says, if I come back as a worm, Padraig, I want to come to your farm. So yeah, this is you can't eat that stuff obviously, but it feeds the ego, no doubt, and it's good validation for what I'm trying to do here.
No, that's
what we're trying to do here. It's not me
that's,
alone, it's the whole family.
And that's really lovely. I guess we're coming towards the end, but I'm just wondering steps for the future, kind of in the next 5 years. Where do you want to be with everything?
So with the explosion of organic farmers coming into the scheme, particularly in Connemara and North and West Mayo, which aren't going to be tillage areas, I see myself maybe as an interface. Traditionally, we had to go to Wexford or Meath or Tipperary or Louth for grain and for straw and for all these crops, and that maybe there's an opportunity there to place myself in that space, but while continuing to be a bee farmer as well, because farmyard manure is the basis of everything that I do in terms of turning it to compost and encouraging soil health. So yeah, maybe extending rotations, discovering, oats is very straightforward. I'm no skilled farmer growing oats. A dummy could grow oats. A dummy with a little bit of coaching can grow oats. Getting into wheats, barleys, and other crops is somewhat trickier, and maybe even peas and beans as fertility, breaks in that rotation. And I also do a lot of red clover, as a fertility builder. So yeah, we'll nurse her along. It's an enjoyable experience. There's lots of wonderful people who are, there's no guarding of information, I find, in this field of organic. I'd really I think it deserves a mention. There's a bunch of guys doing regenerative farming in Ireland, which is, I know it's not organic, but the research they're doing and the trials they're doing are so useful to organic farmers, because if they can bring it all the way organically, whatever trial they're doing, they will do that. They have the comfort of being able to go in there with a pesticide or a herbicide or a Roundup if they need to. But there are some great warriors, is what I would call them, out there pushing the boat out. And I meet them occasionally at BioFarm or at conferences and stuff, and they're just so open with the information. I tried this, it worked, Padraig. I tried this, it didn't work. So, and they're not trying to sell me anything. It's farmer-led innovation, and I believe that's the future, is farmer-led innovation. So every trial you do, will you make sure that you leave a blank spot in the field to see what would have happened if you didn't do your trial, be it a new product or a heavier coat of whatever farmyard manure, or a new organic spray, or maybe even hopefully by next spring we will have we'll be spraying out of this bioreactor. We'll be making sprays with it, and we'll do trial plots hopefully. So that's the future. Innovation, farmer-led innovation, and open source information, Hannah.
Yeah,
so
I think that's a lovely point to end on. Padraig, thank you so much for that. There's a wealth of information there, and I'm sure, like you said, you're going to be a touchstone there for people, especially in the west of Ireland, who are joining the scheme. But we'll leave it there for now, Padraig. Thank you very much. For everyone who's listening, you've been listening to Organic Matters, the podcast brought to you by the Irish Organic Association. And for more information on organics, you can visit www.irishorganicassociation.ie. But for me, Hannah Quinn-Mulligan, thank you very much for tuning in, and we will see you next time.